Oh, hi there. Sorry about that. I was staring to the void when I realized my budget ain't gonna work out. I just zoned out. I didn't know. But that's why we're here today, because we want to fix that. If you zone out while you're trying to figure out your budget, because holy moly, what expenses is happening, what? Then I understand, and I think it's time we fix that. So let me just make sure I'm not popping your ears off here. Alright, so today we will actually be talking about the 50-30-20 rule. Now, the 50-30-20 rule is just a little bit of a flexible rule that is almost a guide you should try and follow, where it means 50 for needs, so this is what you need to survive, 30 for your wants, so this is what you just want to have every month, and then 20 for your savings, and this is percent, so 50%, 30%, 20%. Let's start off with what exactly is a need, and it's important to define this because if you don't know what a need is, then you might be putting your wants in with your needs because mental gymnastics, and I'm also at fault for this, so we'll go through this. Now, what exactly is a need? Now, a need is what you need to survive. You need it to live. But it's a little bit more flexible than that because food is a need. Because you need food to live. That's non-negotiable. But you don't need to eat out. So eating out is not a need. Going to restaurants is not necessarily a need. Buying food to survive the month, that is in fact a need. You need to pay your rent. That's a need because you don't want to be homeless. You need to pay your debt. And you might be wondering, that's a need? What? And that's true because it is a need. Because if you don't pay your debt, that's going to cause lawsuits. It's going to hit your credit score. So it's a little bit of a strange topic, but your debt is actually a need because you actually need to pay it or actually suffer harsher consequences. So you shouldn't just be taking out debt because once you take it out, it becomes a need to pay it back. Because if you don't pay for your car, the debt you took out for your car, they're going to take away your car, you lose that need that you have. So you need to be careful with debt because that falls into the need category. But then you get a little bit of wobbly like topics like, what about Wi-Fi? Is Wi-Fi a need or a want? And this is usually where the mental gymnastics can come into play. Because Wi-Fi can be either or. Do you need Wi-Fi for work? Because you need work to be able to satisfy your needs because work pays the income. If that is the case, then Wi-Fi is in fact a need, so it falls under your needs. Because without Wi-Fi, you can't really work. Why does it feel like I'm lagging? But then it also comes into play where if you don't need it for work, then it becomes a want because you don't need Wi-Fi for work, then it's just a want that you have. Then on the other side of the spectrum, what about Netflix? You need Netflix to just chillax from work. Otherwise, you can't do that great in your work because you're not relaxed. Not quite. That's where mental gymnastics comes to play because Netflix is not a need. It is, in fact, a want because it is just something you have to enjoy yourself. You can live without it. Not having it won't cost you your job like Wi-Fi would. And you always have alternatives that are free like YouTube. It's a little bit of mental gymnastics that you might play. I'm also at fault for this where I would say, man, this is actually a need because how can I work if I'm not happy at my most? I need this game because this game will make me work faster and better because it calms me down after work. Mental gymnastics, and it actually costs you a lot in the long run. So just something you might want to keep in mind. A need is things that you need to survive and keep surviving at your pace. For example, Wi-Fi, you don't necessarily need it to survive, but you need it to work if you're using it for work like I am. So it's important that you clearly define your needs instead of just making something a need because you want it. Speaking of want, let's talk about wants. Now, unlike needs, want is something that you want. You want to have a Netflix subscription. You want to go to the gym. You want a new computer. But here again, wouldn't buying a new computer fall into savings because you're saving for a new computer? That is also a little bit debatable, but actually, no, it's not. A computer, if you want to buy one, so you're saving to buy a computer, is technically not a savings, it's a want. And to understand why, we need to talk about what is savings. Now, the savings are things you don't spend on needs or wants. Now, this is not just necessarily saving for an object that you want, like buying that computer. This is also for saving for emergency, like having an emergency fund, or saving to retire. Now, the reason I say you don't really want to mix these two is because people play a lot of mental gymnastics. So you're going to say, I'm going to save for this computer, and there's all my other saving funds. But you're going to play mental gymnastics to go, oh man, I kind of want that computer now, and I kind of need it because I have all of these extra things I want to learn that could make me more money, and all of these things. And then you convince yourself to use your savings on your computer that you want to buy, or your object that you're trying to buy. Now, this doesn't mean that doesn't fall into savings. It's just that for your mentality's sake, you shouldn't be thinking of it as a saving. You should be thinking of it as a want. Because if you think of it as a want, the chances of you going into your savings and taking that money out and putting it in there to buy the thing you want is going to be a lot less. And the reason why I state this is because I fell for that same trap. I put all of my savings into one specific goal, and every single time, without fail, something comes up and it's a little bit more important than the current savings I have. So I just quickly throw my money in there because I'm anyway saving for it, so I'll just pay it back later, right? And the reason I know other people do this is because I did it. So that's why you need to make the distinction between the two, because it's not the same thing. So you need to make sure that you know what is a saving and what is a want, and that you draw a line between them so you don't do what I did. Now, many people in the past have discussed the 50-30-20 rule because it to them feels unrealistic, especially in today's economy, and they are completely right. It is mostly unrealistic. It's more a rule of thumb rather than something you should strive to constantly get. Because I know for a fact my rent, and I can't go lower than what my rent currently is already 60% of my needs. And then there's no groceries, there's no Wi-Fi, but I can't go lower than my current rent because where I currently live is just that expensive, and I can't downsize my house because we're already as small as we can get. So it's not realistic depending on where you live, how much money you make, and so on. And there's people that make even less than me, and I know that they live in the same place I do, and they have to cough it up as well. So we all know this isn't necessarily realistic, but it's more a goal you can strive towards. But you oftentimes don't realize just how out of hand your budget is getting until you sit down and figure it out. Because for me, if I take a look here at what my calculation was before I did this 50-30-20 rule, my actual calculation for my just day-to-day life was 93.7, meaning 90% of my income went to needs. 3% went to my wants, and the other 7% just went to my savings. And I know that sounds insane, but that is what I figured out. And now that I have realized, whoa, I'm overspending like a ton on my needs, I should start cutting back if I ever want to, be secure whenever I lose my job or something like that. So I realized I could make more money if I were to maybe work a little bit extra time. I could save a little bit more money if I buy a little bit less groceries this month. Or if I save on my electricity, so next month I don't have to buy the full 1,000 Rand electricity. Or if I don't use as much water, I don't have to buy water that month. Even though I may never reach 50-30-20, I was able to, with enough calculation and setting goals and trying to bring it down to 65-15-20. But this was only possible thanks to me knowing that my goals that I set was simply too much. And just because you want to follow the 50-30-20 rule doesn't mean you have to try and stick by it. If you're someone like me and you just prefer to instead have bigger savings than bigger needs because I don't have that much that I need. I'm pretty much happy with what I have, so I don't need something to buy each month to keep me happy. I'd rather put in my savings. Then you are fine to, instead of going, whoa, whew, sorry about that. I completely lost track of what I was just talking about. Ah, yeah. So you didn't have to. I'm sorry. So you didn't have to specifically stay with like the 50-30-20 rule. If you're like me, it could go 50 and 20-30 if you want. It depends on what is important to you. And if you can get your needs below 50, then that means that's more going to your savings or to your needs. So, or to your savings or to your wants, not your needs. So yeah, that's just some things to think about. That completely kind of threw me off where I was. But yeah, let me just show you a little bit something, just so we can get a better view of it, because I know some people learn better when they can actually see it or visualize it instead of just looking at me talking and saying you should be doing this or that. So, but yeah, so here I have a little bit of a spreadsheet. Sorry for your eyes, I know it's light theme, but I don't know why. i3 really struggles with theming, so I'm just not going to even try. So, this is a rough estimate of what someone's salary and outcome expenses and stuff would kind of be where I live. So let's say your monthly income after tax, so you want to know what you make after tax. Let's say it's about 25,000 Rand, which, damn, I wish. But let's say it's about that. Then you have your rent, and that's, let's say, about 10,000 Rand. You have your electricity, that's about 1,000 Rand. Your water, 300 Rand. Your groceries, about 5,000 Rand. If you're living alone, it's a lot cheaper, but if you don't, then that is about a rough estimate of how much it should be, or would be. Your Wi-Fi is about 750 Rand if it's not included in your rent. Your gas for your car is about 1,000 Rand, maybe more if you drive a lot. Your car debt, because remember, debt is a need, because if I don't pay my car debt, then that means I'm going to lose access to my car. So it is in fact a need. And then actually the car insurance as well. Then you have your wants, and let's say this is your Netflix subscription, maybe you have a Disney Plus subscription as well. You have your gym membership, you have your eating out, and then you have maybe some charities. So let's say you maybe fund some open source projects. And you have your savings, and your savings is what is left when your needs and wants are subtracted. So that would be 1,590. So your needs would be 21,150 Rand. Ouch. Your wants 2,260 Rand, and your savings 1,590 Rands. So this roughly comes to 84.6, 9.04, and 6.36%. So this isn't 50-30-20, it is 84.96. Roughly similar to what I had. Now the goal for this would actually be to try and get your needs down to about 12,500. Where I live, that is simply impossible, but that's the goal, to get it to 50. Then your wants to about 7,500, and your savings to about 5,000 Rand at least. Now you might be thinking, but we have all this, how can we even try and fix that? It's so much money. And I'm going to go out of frame here, but I'll actually show you. So let's say we move to a different place, because where I am in my country is just so expensive, it is scary. So let's say I want to save on rent. I could move to a different place, like let's say the Northern Cape. I kind of hear it's pretty affordable there, or to maybe a place further away from the city in where I live, because then it also becomes a lot more affordable, but then you're away from a lot of luxuries. So moving away could solve rent, but I feel a lot of people recommend this, but it's not realistic, because when you move, you need to remember you need to have savings, because you need to pay a deposit for the place you live, you need to pay first month for rent, and then you need to pay people to help you get all of your stuff and move, and then you need to pay for the gas to move, especially if it's far, it's going to be a lot. You need to pay for everything. It's just a lot of money, and if you don't have savings, it's not a realistic goal. And in the short term, it's actually going to cost you more to move than it would in the long term. So short term wise, I feel rent and saying you should just cut it is not always the optimal solution, because it's not always realistic. So instead, let's say with electricity, I could cut back 200 Rand a month. So instead of turning on my dehumidifier for my pets, that could save me about 200 Rand. So There we go. You'll see it actually auto-calculates for me. I figured out how to do that today, so that's pretty awesome. So now, my electricity is 800 Rand. We're a little bit closer to what our goal should be. Then we have our water. Now, I don't use a lot of water if I skip showering because I don't go out. I'm pretty much in my house for like the whole day. So if I, let's say, skip showering and make it once every 2 days, then I could probably save about 100 Rand on water as well. So let's do that. There we go. We've already saved 300 Rand. Now let's say we have our groceries. Now, groceries is a little bit of a tough subject, but a lot of times the groceries you buy could become a little bit more affordable if you're starting to look where you can save. And we already do that. We already get all of the places. We go to all the places, we find out who is asking what, and we go to each specific place to buy the one of the best price. So if you're already doing that, that's great. But now you should be thinking, everything you're buying, is that really needed? Do you really need that bag of chips? Do you really need that or that or that or that? Do you really need to buy so much meat? What about if you buy more affordable things like more bread and stuff like that? Maybe you could save a little bit of money. So let's assume, make an assumption here, we could, instead of paying 5,000 Rand, we could maybe bring it down to about 4,000 Rand. Because remember, groceries also include like cleaning supplies and stuff, so we can't go back too much. And maybe just buy what you need. I know my family likes to buy ahead of time. So let's say toilet paper, we usually buy, and if there's still left a month, we still buy anyways. So if 1 month we can't buy it, we still have enough. So that's one strategy you might be following, and that's why you can't bring it down. But let's assume you're not following that strategy, so you bring it down to with 1,000 Rand. They're already falling to under 80%. That is already a massive win. Now let's say Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is absurdly expensive where I live, again. But we can bring it down if we're willing to go to a lower Wi-Fi speed, which it was already so low. But if you go to a lower Wi-Fi speed, if you're willing to do that, if you can afford to do that, because remember, depending on your job, having a low Wi-Fi speed might actually make it difficult to work. So for me, not that much. It will just make it not nice to play games or to work with, but we can bring it down. So let's say instead of 750 Rand, we choose that more affordable and actually, unfortunately, lowest option, and we make it 500 Rand. There we go. So now our Wi-Fi is down. There's gas. Now 1,000 Rand fills my car's tank. So I'm happy with 1,000 Rand. But let's say we don't travel that much, or we restrict our traveling to only when we need to. And so we do everything at once instead of just driving and doing our thing and coming back. Because that kind of wastes gas when you could just be going out, do everything you need, come back, and then next week do the same again. So you could probably, depending on what job you're doing, maybe slice that down from 1,000 Rand. Let's say we can maybe cut 250 from it. I wouldn't really say too much. They have the car debt. Unfortunately, there's not much we can do about that debt. Most we can do is maybe call in here if they could give us a better interest rate, maybe better pricing. Maybe go to a bank here. Would they be willing to give us better monthly costs on it? Then maybe you could actually get through with that. But for the most part, you can't change your debt unless you maybe you consolidate all your debt, meaning put it all into one place. That could help as well, especially with interest from everywhere and it's all in one place with one interest. Could help as well with maybe your monthly payment if your monthly payment is lower. But for that, I'm going to leave it because I can't change it. Same with car insurance, you can't really change it. Best you can do is here at a different car insurance place that you trust and say, hey, could we potentially cut back here? Yes or no and whatnot. But again, just like debt, not really something simple you can do. Just like with rent, it's not simple, it takes a lot of extra work, but it is doable. So let's see, we already brought it down a lot. It's now at 77%, bringing our monthly savings up a lot already. Now let's go to wants. Do I really want Netflix? Is it really that great? Not really. We have YouTube, and in South Africa, sailing the high seas is anyways not really something that's uncommon. I just like supporting people or creators, that's why I buy these subscriptions. But let's say it's really getting tough. So let's actually just remove Netflix and Disney Plus. And you could maybe consider maybe have 4 or 5 subscriptions there. So let's remove that. There we go. Our savings are already building. But you'll notice my bias here because I want to build that savings. If you don't want to build the savings and you more want to focus on wants, then go ahead. But my bias will always be towards the savings, and saving on wants will always also give you more money for needs. So if you pay less on wants, but you really, really want the faster Wi-Fi because you need the Wi-Fi, but you don't need the faster speed, but you really want that little bit faster Wi-Fi, the money we just saved could pay for that. Because we saved like almost 300 Rand there. That was about as much as we had to pay for the Wi-Fi just to get that extra speed. So now you're saving yourself that, and you can actually move that money there if you want. Anyways, then the gym membership. Gyms are unfortunately incredibly expensive here, but if I'm willing to drive a little bit further out, we can actually drop that down to about 300 Rand. So if you just don't go to the gym and you just maybe run around outside, if it's safe in your area, then that could also work. So you could bring that down to 0, but let's say I want to stay fit, I don't want to make this belly grow any bigger, but I'm willing to downgrade, and of course willing to pay the fees that the place is going to ask me, and all of their scummy extra like little bit of fees that they're going to send you each month just because they're that scummy, because of course it's a gym membership, of course they'll do that. But if I'm willing to go for all of that to bring it down, then we could save a lot of money here, because we can bring it down to freaking 300 Rand. So, and we're already almost at the 50, 30, 20 rule. Granted, it's a little bit wonked, but it is possible now. Eating out, I don't need to do that. I really don't care. But I like to take my parents out and my sister at least once a month. Just, so we have time to spend together and whatnot. So I don't really want to bring that down, but I know I can bring it down by about 200 Rand while still being able to take my parents out as well as my sister. So there we go. And in charity, depending on how you feel about it, do you really want to support your local programmer or whatnot? Do you really want to support your YouTuber? Do you really want to help the homeless? It depends on what your stances are. But if you notice that your budget is really, really starting to struggle, then don't feel guilty to bring that down. Because if you don't bring that down, you might end up being the one that's on the receiving end of the charity instead of the one giving the charity. So you should also be careful, because saving a little bit now could help you pay more in charity later anyways. So don't feel guilty if you need to bring that down. Let's say as you can see, I can't. There we go. So now I've brought it down to 77,418. Our savings is already growing substantially more than what it was before. This means that every month, if something like hits the fan, then we can take from our savings and actually use it as a backup. Unfortunately, not much we can do about our needs. The only way we can actually improve this is maybe doing a little bit of overtime. So let's say I make 25k there, I would love to, but let's say I do that and every month I can make about 5,000 Rand overtime, then it's already looking a lot better. But then again, you need to remember, are you going to be able to hit that 5,000 Rand mark each month? Are you going to get burnout? Is there going to maybe be a month that you can't do that? If you can consistently do that and your company can consistently pay out that amount, then I recommend you go for that. But if you know you're going to burn out, or you know that you're not going to be able to keep that, then just keep that in mind when you're building your budget like this, to know what exactly is going where. And now you'll notice our 50, 30, 20 rule is actually now 64, 3, 31. That's a massive improvement. And if you feel like you're saving more than enough, you can actually move some of that back to your wants. Get yourself Netflix again. Get yourself maybe Disney Plus. So again, the 50, 30, 20 rule is more just a rule of thumb. It's not something you need to follow, but it's something that might help you if you were to follow it. So yeah, this is just a little bit of an example of what you could potentially do to help you figure out what you want. And I recommend doing this exact method. Go to your needs, wants, and savings like in an Excel spreadsheet like this. And here I'll actually show you how it's calculated. So pretty much you have your sum. So it's equal symbol to say you're going to do some math. You have your sum. Then in the brackets, you literally just click the field that you want. So that B13, it is literally the field B13. So I literally clicked it. You'll see it's actually highlighted in blue. I clicked it and it auto-filled that field for me. Divided by, and it's sum, and this would be 81. Or actually, that's 81, or B1, my bad. I was like, what, 81? I'm just terrible of seeing the color red. Yeah, so that's B1, that's our actual monthly income, times 100. And that's how we calculate it. So if you want to do that, you can follow a similar structure. So yeah, I highly recommend you do this. Put all of your needs and all of your wants like that. And then calculate what's going where, because this is an eye-opener. You may not realize it, but you are spending a lot more than you actually have to or need to. So yeah, I really hope this maybe opened your eyes, maybe helped you figure out how can you save money. And I hope that if you are in a terrible financial situation, I do hope that it gets better for you, because it can. With enough proper planning and with enough effort and investment of time, you could actually bring all of this down a lot. Like as I stated before, my monthly expenses was like 90 something something, and now I think it's 60 something something. So it's a lot better, and it's very similar to this. I took real life financial breakdowns. I looked at what some of mine and what some of my sisters was and some of my parents was. I threw them all in there to kind of give you about an average of what you would be paying. And then this is a very legitimate, real example. I looked at the Wi-Fi places that was in my area. I noticed I can't bring my Wi-Fi down, or I can bring it down. My sister can bring theirs down. My parents can bring theirs down. All of them fell around the same area. If you live in Gauteng, maybe it might actually be more affordable, and so on. So these are real life scenarios in which you can bring it down. So I highly recommend you follow this along, because you could really help your budget in the long run with this. Now, thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all again in the next video.